Hey guys, I'm Pranav Shastri and in today's video I'll be retrofitting a 9-pin USB motherboard header to PCI bracket slot with a 10-pin motherboard header. I'll be doing this with the Kobian brand motherboard which has an 80 form factor model ZX80 and it was manufactured back in 1999. Back then these USB motherboard headers were a new thing since it had just been around 4 years since USB was invented and it looks like some sort of standardization was still in progress. Now on almost all ATX motherboards that are manufactured after the year 2000 you can observe a 9-pin USB motherboard header. One pin is blanked for correct orientation of the header. However, this motherboard has a 10-pin header, so I'll have to make an additional hole in the female connector. So as you can see, this is our 10-pin USB header which is labeled USB 1. You can see this is a 9-pin USB motherboard header. I'll have to make an additional hole in the female connector so that it can go into all the 10 pins. Another question in your minds would be that would we need to install any additional device drivers for this to work and where do we find them? The answer is that you don't have to install any sort of additional drivers. That's because the driver CD that came with your motherboard had the driver for this as well and it should already be installed on your computer since all the motherboard drivers would have been installed from the CD when the operating system was installed. Now that we have finished making the hole, we'll just put it into this old hard drive what I have to see if all the pins are fitting properly. So you can see that it's a perfect fit. Now we are going to go ahead and plug this into our motherboard. Now there's a problem. Since there's no sort of keying on the motherboard to decide the orientation of the connector, you would have to look at the electrical tracings on the motherboard carefully. Since we know that USB 2.0 and 1.1 works on 4 wires, there would be 2 pins on the motherboard header which would not be connected with any tracings. We would have to align the 2 blank pins of our female connector along with those 2 blank headers. This way we can ensure that we don't end up inserting our header upside down. Now that we have connected the USB header successfully, we'll have to install this expansion bracket into the expansion slot properly using the system casing screws. I personally like this 80 form factor over the ATX form factor which took over from the 2000s because in the ATX form factor I feel it is very congested with all the IO pins and everything soldered to the motherboard, so there's lesser room for accessibility between each IO slot. That's why I like the 80 and baby 80 form factor over the ATX since all the IO slots are nicely ordered in the expansion bracket slots with headers connecting to the pins on the motherboard. So now we'll power up our computer and boot into the operating system so that we can verify that the USB header and the slots are working properly. Nostalgic and good old Windows XP brings back a lot of memories. Now that we have booted into our good old Windows XP, I'm going to connect an 8GB pen drive to one of the USB slots and see if it works properly. You can see that as soon as we have connected the USB pen drive, a notification is flashing here which says that this device can perform faster. That's because this header is a USB 1.1 header, while the pen drive supports USB 2.0 standards and Windows XP thinks that you should plug it into a USB 2.0 port, probably the PCI expansion card what I've installed below. You can see that the contents of the pen drive are showing up properly. So in this way, 24 years after the inception of this computer, we have finally put the USB 1.1 internal motherboard USB header to some good use. Thank you for watching the video guys. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, then please do consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. If you have any doubts, please do comment them below and I'll try my best to solve them. So thanks for watching.